All right, man, peace. So it seems as though Kyrie Irving, the stellar point guard of the Boston Celtics, has had a sudden change of heart in regards to the amount of acclaim and credit that he's willing to give LeBron James publicly. And that may be for a series of reasons. Could it be that he's been told by the Boston front office that they're considering negotiating with LeBron James, and maybe he has to play nice? Or maybe, and more likely, it is that, as many of us have experienced in life, sometimes distance away from a certain person can make you understand them and view them with a different perspective, with a greater amount of appreciation for what they brought to the table. And I'm not just speaking about a significant other or former significant other. It could be a family member. It could be someone that you worked with, where when you were forced to be within close proximity with them for a long period of time, maybe your personality did not jibe with theirs or vice versa. And in the aftermath of their departure or your departure, you've been able to view them with a greater deal of clarity, and you appreciate them more, they appreciate you more. Well, anyway, Kyrie was asked about who he thought was the real MVP or who deserved to win the MVP award for the NBA regular season. And he declared that James Harden was the quote-unquote people's MVP, but LeBron James was the real MVP. So, of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Sports Center right now. I'm Anthony at the Collins. James Harden may have won the NBA MVP, but if you ask Celtics star Kyrie Irving, it should have been someone else. Irving telling the radio station Hot 97 in New York that his former teammate was robbed from the award.
MVP is hard to gauge nowadays, because now you have the people's MVP, then you have the NBA's MVP.
I don't think that the MVP award is that hard to gauge, Kyrie Irving. I've always stated that it's the best player on the best team when and if he has a transcendent season. It's pretty obvious that it was James Harden. But Kyrie can be a little wishy-washy, and depending on the mood that he's in, he may change his pick. He can be rather capricious at times. But also, please pay very close attention to Kyrie Irving's left wrist. He has on that red string for the Kabbalah. So once again, yes, Kyrie Irving is in the craft. He is a Luciferian. No doubt he's being guided by his mentor, Kobe Bean Bryant, allegedly.
So
who's the people's MVP in your mind?
I think the people's MVP was definitely James.
Okay.
But the NBA MVP was definitely Bron.
I actually think that it's the opposite. That term people's champion or people's MVP or people's what have you originated, as far as I know, with Muhammad Ali, who was known as the people's champion because he did not have the belt. Someone else had the heavyweight championship belt because Muhammad Ali was forced into exile, so he became known as the people's champion. So I don't think that James Harden would be the people's MVP in Kyrie Irving's analogy. That would be LeBron James. Either way, I disagree. I think that James Harden was the NBA's regular season MVP, and he deserves to be so.
So you think LeBron should have gotten the MVP?
I mean, if we're talking strictly based off stats, he checks every
It's him
mark,
every year, though, in that regard, right? Does anyone do more for one team than LeBron does?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
It's tough, right?
It's tough. I mean, but it's
incredible.
boring to give it to him every season.
That's incredible.
Let's be for real. Kyrie looks like he may have had a mimosa before this interview. He looking real mellow. He might sober up and say, what the hell was I talking about? Why would I give that bald-headed nigga any credit for? The real MVP is James Harden. My bad.
For more on this, here's First Take.
Ebro in the morning, good show right there. All right, guys, Kyrie Irving calls James Harden the people's champ, actually the people's MVP, but LeBron James the real MVP. We on this program are well aware of the rift that divided Kyrie and LeBron. So with that being said, Max, what do you make of this statement coming from Kyrie?
As I've already stated in the intro to this video, I look at it as Kyrie Irving looking back at his time with LeBron and starting to appreciate him a little bit more in regards to what he brought to the table. That doesn't mean that he would ever necessarily want to play with him again. But I do think that he appreciates and that he's always appreciated what LeBron can do on a basketball court. It's just that his personality does not truly jive with LeBron James's personality. They don't jive together. They don't vibe together. Because LeBron has a lot of feminine energy, and Kyrie, on the other hand, is very calm. He's very subdued. And I just believe that his thought process is different in regards to how he solves problems. He's not someone who's going to seek out unnecessary confrontation or to be someone who endorses chaos for the sake of chaos. Even LeBron James's representation is on record as stating that he thrives in chaos. He enjoys it. Why is that? Because he has a lot of feminine energy.
Two things. One, Kyrie is being the bigger man, or a big man at least. Good for him. But I want to give him credit for that. Just as I give him credit for leading the Celtics early in the season after I was skeptical whether or not...
A little bit more than skeptical, you were quite frankly dismissive. And you were incredulous at the notion that anyone would want to leave your idol LeBron James. You simply could not believe it. Because as you and many other media pundits try to propagate continuously, LeBron James gives you your best chance of winning an NBA title. I have no idea why you say that when the man is 3-6 in the finals, and quite frankly, 2 of the 3 finals that he won, he honestly had no business winning.
He was actually a winning player. He was showing that he sure was a winning player.
I would go further than that, sir. I would go further than that, sir. You were far more than skeptical.
I agree, Stephen A. Smith.
Come on now.
No, I was skeptical. I asked the question. I didn't say no. I pointed to the evidence and said I was skeptical as a result.
No, I'm not talking about what you asked him when you interviewed him. I'm talking about when you said when the trade went down. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you can go back and look what I said. I think skeptical. I think skeptical. No, I don't think so. But okay, you can categorize it how you like.
I agree with Stephen A. Smith. You were far more than skeptical. You were derisive. You were denigrating. You tried to marginalize what Kyrie could do. And to be quite frank with you, not only did Kyrie prove you wrong, he also forced me to readjust and recalibrate how I viewed him. Because even though I knew that he has talent all the way to the nth degree, I was not quite sure how he was going to be able to utilize his point guard skills in that offensive system. Because for the most part, Tyronn Lue and LeBron James had relegated him to a quote-unquote weapon, as you so succinctly and accurately called Kyrie during his time period with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So he was able to show his entire game, his entire repertoire, as Marv Albert would say, when he was traded over to the Boston Celtics.
The point is that Kyrie also is doing something else here, Stephen A., whether or not he intends to, and I'm skeptical, Stephen A., that he doesn't. What he's saying is, guys, yeah, I wasn't the best player on that team. I get it. You know why? Because LeBron is on some absurd level. He's better than everyone.
I'm not quite sure if Kyrie was going there. I think that what Kyrie was essentially saying is that I can appreciate LeBron's greatness while I'm no longer there, because I'm no longer forced to conform to being a background dancer in his band. That's truly what Kyrie was saying. Anyone who's been associated with James Brown or Michael Jackson or anyone of that caliber will tell you that those people are megalomaniacal in their devotion to the craft. And everyone cannot put up with that type of pressure, especially when all the energy that you're putting into the situation is meant purely for the exaltation of that individual and really none for yourself.
But I was Kobe. He might have been Shaq in his prime, but in other words, just because I wasn't the best player on the Cavs, that doesn't mean I'm not an MVP level player, just like James Harden.
I don't think that Kyrie was saying all that, sir. To be quite frank with you, your assertions are baseless.
Well, I take the first point. I think that he was definitely being a bigger man because, you know, you got to remember what has been my biggest beef with LeBron and the notion of him being the MVP. The MVP is not just about your numbers, and it's not just your excellence in terms of your abilities.
Thank you, Stephen A. Smith, because that is how Kyrie Irving qualified his assertion that LeBron James was the quote-unquote real MVP. He said if you go by the numbers. In other words, if you were to have an Offensive Player of the Year award in the NBA, then LeBron James should have gotten that award, yes. But in regards to most valuable player, no. And many of LeBron James's supporters, both on the internet and in the mainstream liberal sports media, try to assert that, well, look at what LeBron James is doing on the basketball court and compare it to James Harden. LeBron James's team has won 51, 52 games, and it's all because of him, while James Harden's team won 65 games, but he missed this amount of time, and he had Chris Paul. Well, here's the issue with that sentiment. James Harden did not have Chris Paul last year, and I believe the Houston Rockets won well over 50 games, and I believe they won more games than the Cleveland Cavaliers won last regular season with Kyrie Irving. So what was the excuse last year? A year in which I'm sure that once again, Max Kellerman thought that LeBron James should have been the MVP. And I thought that James Harden got robbed when they gave it to Russell Westbrook. You can't just use the who won more games in the regular season argument based on a certain player's impact on their particular team when we all know that the Cleveland Cavaliers run the LeBron James system. And the Houston Rockets, they run the Mike D'Antoni system. And even with that, James Harden was able to lead his team to more regular season wins the year before Chris Paul got there. He was able to win more regular season games in a tougher conference than what LeBron James was able to win in the Eastern Conference. So I think that the argument, the debate is a little bit more nuanced than that.
It's about your leadership as well. All of that stuff plays a role. And I think that when you look at the dysfunctionality that raked through Cleveland last year, that made it such a roller coaster ride, that put them in such a precarious situation where we were all questioning whether or not they would even make it out of the playoffs or make it past the first round. I think all those things had a lot to do with LeBron. And obviously the first domino to fall was Kyrie Irving wanting out and ultimately getting out of Cleveland. So I definitely think that Kyrie Irving was being the bigger man. And I also think that Kyrie Irving, by saying what he said, is not only being the bigger man, but also sort of altering the narrative to some degree. He clearly learned from LeBron James in that regard. Because if you sit up there and you're willing to give LeBron James credit and show him the respect he so richly deserves, because there is no doubt that LeBron deserves that respect and that credit. The flip side to it all is that nobody is focused anymore on the fact that you and LeBron parted ways. He gets to play ball in peace. You get to play ball in peace.
Stephen A. Smith, I also think that the fact of the matter is that Kyrie is not a person who holds on to emotional baggage for very long. He seems like someone who has no issues moving forward because many of the things that he does are motivated by his own self-improvement. So there aren't any nefarious motivations with him. There isn't any skullduggery afoot with Kyrie. So he has no problems getting over stuff. I think that LeBron sometimes may have certain issues with people because he has an image that he portrays on television or to the public, and he may be a bit different off camera. I don't get that effect from Kyrie. I think that Kyrie is more of a live and let live type of a person. He is a Luciferian, just like LeBron James is, but that's for another video. The thing to me is that Kyrie has looked around and he said to himself, right now I have the opportunity to win a championship. The Boston Celtics are the favorites to get back to the finals. So why would I be worried about how people are going to view it if I state that I think that LeBron James was the real MVP? He knows that more likely than not, if he were to say anything other than that, the media would try to spin it. And if Kyrie honestly believes that LeBron is the real MVP, great. If he doesn't, then he's attempting to be shrewd. And maybe he is trying to contort a possible media narrative, as Stephen A. Smith is stating. As far as I'm concerned, I just don't think that it's that deep. I think that Kyrie has come to the understanding that the MVP award in this day and age is evaluated by who has the best stats. It's no longer about who's the best player on the best team, having a great season on that team like it was when I was growing up. Now it's just a stat competition.
And you can be done with it, and that's that. As opposed to the narrative of LeBron and Kyrie falling out in love with one another, following them around wherever they go. The fact that Kyrie is big enough to acknowledge that, which, by the way, I think for the most part he's always been that way.
Absolutely.
I think that sort of assuages the concerns that people may have in terms of the narrative involving the LeBron and Kyrie for years to come. I think that that's what this was about as well.
Even though I do believe that 15 or 20 years from now, much like the Kobe Shaq thing, there are going to be some tidbits in regards to what exactly it was that led to the disintegration of their relationship. Those tidbits are going to be brought to the forefront. And I'm sure that Stephen A. Smith knows a lot, but he doesn't say it.
Yeah, and he's also telling the truth. I mean, you got to give him credit for that.
He is telling the truth.
LeBron.
Well, he's telling the truth based on the modern day understanding that the MVP is the person who has the best offensive stats. If we're going to go by that, then yes, it's LeBron James. But if it's the best player on the best team and he's having a transcendent season, then it's James Harden.
LeBron is
He's telling the truth.
right. He's telling the truth as he sees it. I will give Kyrie credit.
Well,
for that. When he came
not
on,
about the MVP. At the MVP talent, I'm just saying, you know how I feel James Harden should have been the MVP. So I don't mean to tell the truth about that. I mean to tell
I'm saying as he sees it.
LeBron. Yes.
Yeah, I think he's telling the truth about the MVP as he sees it. I mean.
Well, I think that Kyrie is telling the truth about the MVP as he sees it according to the parameters that he's now been told make up the MVP. That's why he qualified it by stating, well, if you go by the numbers, it's LeBron. That's why Kyrie qualified it, Max Kellerman.
I mean, Stephen A., when he came on this show, I felt he was being evasive, which is being less than honest, even if you're...
No, sir. He was not being evasive. He was just not going to allow you to determine the rules of engagement in the conversation, and that's what frustrated you because you thought that you were smarter than him. You thought that you were going to ask him questions that were going to put him in a precarious position where he was going to be forced to quote-unquote acknowledge that he was in the wrong for leaving your boo thing, LeBron James. And he did not give you that satisfaction. That's why you were upset, Max Kellerman.
You're not, like, lying. You're not being forthright with what you think. And I think partly that's because they were thinking...
Well, partly that's because you learn in life that forthrightness is not always the best way to go in every situation, because there are many people who cannot handle the truth. As the scriptures tell you in Galatians, the 4th chapter and the 16th verse, have I become your enemy because I tell you the truth? That happens. And when you're a commodity like a Kyrie Irving and you're trying to move forward with your life, the last thing that you want to do is enable certain factions that are trying to get you to go down into the mud with them and sling gossip on television. Why would you do that? That would make no sense.
There were things he didn't want to talk about. And we butted heads because I said, hey, if there are things you don't want to talk about, just say it. And he didn't want to say that. And then
You guys didn't really butt heads like that. He basically put you in your place and you got upset. And your real liberal altar came out. The true liberal altar is the white man's burden altar, which is I know what's best for you, alter ego. That started to creep out in a subsequent segment with you and Will Kane.
And then I felt like he didn't want to say that and he was being evasive. Maybe a little PR conscious or whatever it is. But I'll give Kyrie Irving credit for being honest here. And even when I got on him for being, I felt, irresponsible and really ignorant about, like, the earth being flat.
Right, but Max Kellerman, you have to move past that. And you see how indignant the Caucasian liberals will get when you don't agree with all of their sentiments. It's amazing to me how transparent it is that Max Kellerman is a hypocrite when you don't agree with him. The liberal Caucasian will always speak to the so-called black male and female like they're dogs, not like they're human beings, but they do it in a patronizing way. And once the so-called black man especially refutes any of their sentiments, you'll see their true derisive tone come out. This is a sports show. Why do you keep talking about your contention with Kyrie about the earth being flat? Who gives a shit? He does not believe it? Okay, no problem. It is what it is.
Things like that. It does take a certain amount of courage and to be honest about your feelings about something, even when you hold a really stupid opinion.
Yes, you do that every day.
Or you don't know the facts. So I will...
Once again, you do that every day, sir.
Will give him credit for, skepticism or cynicism aside, just being honest. This is how he felt about it. LeBron's better, but James Harden got the award.
Yeah.
Well, basically, what Kyrie implied by his statements is that LeBron's game is more comprehensive, which is part of the LeBron James aura, the LeBron James mystique, that he can do everything. That's why I call him Galactus. People believe that he empowers his teammates. It's actually the opposite. His teammates empower him because he sucks all their energy out and he uses it to galvanize his own force. That's what LeBron James is. That is the LeBron James system.
Yeah, it's probably also easier to compliment LeBron when you're not in competition for the award as well because he didn't play. Right?
Well, actually, it's easier to compliment LeBron when you know that he's no longer a threat to you next season because your team is not a favorite. It's very easy to be magnanimous when the person that you're talking about is a has-been, quote unquote. Let's be for real. LeBron James is a man without a home right now. He's someone hoping to build a super team in the Western Conference where he's going to have to go up against two other teams that will have a very good chance of beating him, even if they have himself, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard. So Kyrie Irving at this point is like, you know what? That man has bigger fish to fry, and I'm not going to get involved in any dumb shit by saying that I believe that James Harden is the real MVP I'll play it safe, and I will just assert that LeBron James is the real MVP and James Harden is the people's MVP, and just get out of this conversation as quickly as possible. It is what it is. It's not that big a deal.
Right. Coming up.
But anyway, that's pretty much it on that. We'll see what happens in this up-and-coming season. Kyrie Irving is focused on making sure that he can lead his team as far as their potential will allow them to be led, which should be to the championship round. So peace.